Everybody, welcome back to my shop. Today we're going to be building a picture frame wall display, and it's going to be kind of like an overgrown shadow box. So I'm going to get started here by ripping down with my track saw the 3/4 inch Baltic birch plywood that I'm going to be using for the backer and the sides. Now since this piece is rather large that I need to cut, I'm going to just use the track saw since I have it out and cross cut it to the length that I need also. After cutting everything from the 4x8 sheet down to a more manageable size, now it's over to the table saw and I can start to cut the sides and top pieces out of extra pieces of plywood to create the shadow box effect. And this is also going to create a depth to the piece, and not only to recess the picture frames in, but to also give me something for the moldings to wrap around the unit and give it that appearance. And then I'll trim those pieces here at the miter saw. I'll hold the top and bottom in place with a parallel clamp. Then I'll put the sides up against it and I'll use my pencil to scribe a line so I get a perfect cut at the miter saw. Before I assemble the shadow box, I'm going to apply stain to the backer and the inside of the side pieces and the top and the bottom, because it's going to be easier to do it now and get full coverage all the way to the very ends rather than later when everything's assembled and you have to try to kind of squeeze the stain in there and you might have a seam showing. Now once the stain's had time to dry, I'll just apply some glue and some brad nails and attach it and assemble the shadow box. Now I want to have about 1.5 inch space between each picture frame, so I've just taken 2 scrap pieces of 3/4 inch plywood. I'm using those as a spacer block. Now I'm going to get started milling up the pieces that are going to be the supports for the picture frames and the rails and stiles of the face frames. So before I start to cut that on the table saw, I need to straighten one edge, and I'm just going to do that with a hand plane. Now I'm running the support rails through the router table with a rabbeting bit, and I'm going to cut a 1/8 inch rabbet on one side, then I'm going to flip the support rail over and I'm going to cut a 3/8 inch rabbet on the other side. That's going to allow me to slide the picture frames in and out.
Alright, so to give you an idea of what I had in mind here for laying out these frames, and the reason I did it was I need to have these removable so that pictures can go in there, and if they need to be replaced, they can be taken out without any of the, having it like a nail behind it to hang it on, because I think that would look pretty stupid, and it would also be, very, like bland in the middle. So I'm going to have these strappings running across between the frames, and you saw what I did. I cut a rabbet on one side, 1/8 of an inch. I don't know if the camera can capture that. One side is 1/8 of an inch deep, the other side's 3/8 deep. The reason I did that was so that I can put this in here, line it up where I need it, which is going to be over the first lip of the frames, just to give it enough space for the picture frames to be pushed upwards, lifted out and taken out like that. Replace the picture, put it back in, drop it in, and then you can see it sits between those rabbets and catches the frame so they can never fall out in the event of it being shaken, or when you're taking the other frames out, you don't want anything else falling out. So that's going to catch it, and it's also going to allow me to remove it, change the frames. Alright, so I'm going to cut the other piece with 2 rabbets on it, and then I'll stain everything first because it's going to be too much of a pain to stain it while it's on there. So I'll pre-stain that while I cut also the stiles and rails. That's going to frame this thing out. Then we'll get working on the top and some crown molding, and we'll get a dust cap, mantle shelf style top, and also a nice cap ledge for the bottom. Alright, so let's get moving.
Now that the strapping's done, what I can do is start to work on the frame here. So I'm going to start to cut the stiles and rails. Over at the miter saw, I'll trim one edge square, I'll flip it around, set up a stop block, and cut all parts to equal length. Once the stiles are cut, I can put them in place, measure a mark for the rails, and cut them at the miter saw as well. I'll assemble the face frames with pocket screws. Once I have the face frame assembled, I could also cut the top and bottom dust cap and mantle shelf. Then I'll just rip them to their final dimensions here at the table saw. Now finally onto some assembly here. I'm going to install the support rails first. Glue and some brad nails. I'm using the picture frames as a guide, keeping them in place while I install the support rails. And what that's going to allow me to do is make sure that everything stays even and I'm able to get these picture frames out later on, rather than going on, precise measurements and having made a mistake and then not being able to get the picture frame out once it's done. I'm installing the bottom first. I'll install the face frame right afterwards, because what this will do is give me a nice crisp edge to rest the face frame against when I'm installing that. For the bottom trim, I'm using simple cove molding, so I'll cut the angles now, and I'm going to install that with 23 gauge pin nails. And now for the top, I'm using 3.5 inch crown molding. I'll measure and mark that and cut it the same way I did for the cove molding. Now with the miter saw, the crown molding has to be upside down and backwards when you cut it, otherwise you're going to cut the angle in the wrong direction. And now for my favorite part, spraying 3 coats of polyurethane to finish the project off.
Okay guys, that's it for this week's project. I hope everybody enjoyed the build as much as I did. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like button and the picture of the notification bell. That'll notify you every time I upload a video. And also follow me on Instagram. I'll put the link below. And I'll see you guys next time. I'll get you some pictures also of this when it's installed, where it's going to be, with all the picture frames in it, the way it's going to sit on the wall. This is going to be the bottom, and that is the top.